Hello, Euriza. This is my feedback to your mock listening. Now, before I get into the paragraphs, let me just say I looked at your notes. They're very good notes. But for the exam, we're not assessing the quality of the notes. The only thing we're interested in is whether the final notes are sufficiently different from the first notes. In yours, both sets of notes are good, but to make sure that whoever is assessing you in the final exam recognizes a significant difference, to make sure that there is a difference, what you can do, just sit down the first time you listen to it and take notes as you listen, the way you would in a proper lecture hall, for instance, right? Imagine you're in a lecture, there is a speaker speaking fast, you cannot cope, and at that point you cannot say, oh, this is a supporting idea, this is evidence, this is the main idea. All you can do is just make a very messy set of notes. So it should be all full of abbreviations, symbols, arrows, all kinds of signs, whatever abbreviations, not full sentences. So it's okay for the first notes to be very messy, right? And then you can sit down, and after you've discussed it, you can make the final notes organized the way you have, with supporting ideas, evidence. This will ensure that there is a significant difference, right? So you can get full credit for your notes. That would be my recommendation. Okay, now let's look at those paragraphs. The summary is very good. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just the only thing I would change here is the main idea. It looks more like, this looks more like a supporting idea. When he was talking about how a lot of these original thinkers are not first movers, they will wait and see what's out there on the market. They will look to see if there's an existing product or service, and then they will improve on that. You know, things like, he gave examples of Facebook and other companies. They didn't do it first, they just did it better. That's definitely a very good supporting idea, but I wouldn't say that that's the main idea, right? So, but other than that, you've done a very good job. Lots of good cohesion here, devices, everything. Reporting verbs. You've got a good concluding sentence. I don't see any problem with your summary. And you've stayed away from examples and evidence, which is good. And you've focused mostly on practically all on the supporting ideas. That's very good. I would maybe put this as a supporting idea, the one about being not the first to create a product, but waiting and seeing what the competition has, and then innovating based on what's out there already. So they're not necessarily first movers. They're not the first to create a specific product or service or an idea. Often they just improve on what is available. I think that was an important supporting idea. But other than that, you've done a very good job. Now let's look at the other paragraphs. Identification. So one of the speaker's supporting ideas is that original thinkers usually procrastinate. Okay. Uses several pieces of evidence. The story of Warby Parker, one of the successful companies, the results of a survey in which he determines how procrastination affects success. Sure. The results of an experiment. Okay. And then success stories. Now, because this is getting very long, I would suggest you use semicolons, because some of these may end up being full clauses and not just phrases. To separate clauses, it's much better to use semicolons, okay, in between. Besides the story of Facebook and Google, which are much more successful than Yahoo and AltaVista, also corroborates the author's assertion. Okay, sure. Very nice paragraph. I don't know how many words this is, but you've done a good job. Yeah. I'm not sure. I forgot how to. What's the word count on this thing? Should be a tool here saying Yeah, about the word count. Anyways, you can check that. But it looks very good. As a paragraph, you've done a very good job here. Okay, now let's move to the evidence evaluation. The evidence provided by the speaker was sufficient. Okay. The success stories of famous people and founders of Warby Parker, who delayed the completion, okay, as well as, okay, which became more popular than Yahoo, prove that the original, prove is a bit of a problematic verb. Prove would mean that there is no other truth, that's the speaker's truth is the only one. It's very difficult. In a scientific experiment, you may be able to prove, let's say, that water boils at 100 degrees centigrade, right? Or that water freezes at 0. But this is more of an idea which is kind of hard to prove. So to support his claim, you could say that, original thinkers really put things off. I like the way you've tried to paraphrase, very nice. Okay, so fine, nobody is going to disagree with you. You've given a very good explanation, and that's fine. Somebody else might say, this is not sufficient, and their answer could still be, both your answer and their answer could still be excellent. So no problem with that. Also, the results from a survey of successful and an experiment. Okay. Statistics of the intensity of failure. Yeah, I'm not sure about this phrase. Intensity of failure sounds almost funny. Somebody is failing and like intensely failing, so you probably want to change that. Some other better collocation. The extent maybe of failure. Show that procrastination makes people think differently, which ultimately leads to success. Okay, here that's all very good. But what are you still here on sufficiency with this thing? Remember, we need to assess 3 things: sufficiency, relevance, and representativeness. And you haven't mentioned them yet. And you're almost done with this paragraph, right? So at this point, after you're done with sufficiency, you should be talking about the next thing already, either relevance or representativeness, whatever you decide. I would suggest from sufficiency move to relevance and then on to representativeness. And then when you say that this is completely current, we're not assessing the CRAP criteria. We're not talking about currency. Remember, just the 3 things: sufficient, representative, relevant. That's all we're interested in. Now, if you say because it's current, it's also relevant, that's another story. That's a very good way. You can put it in that way. Current data is also ensures that it's relevant. You could say that, but you do need to mention relevant. You see? And at this point, I would say here you should already have talked about relevance, right? Both the stories of successful people and companies and the results of research show that procrastination can lead to success. Okay, and that's why it is relevant. So you should make that explicit. Sorry, my computer. So this is a very good thought process, but I would say again, make sure you have mentioned relevant, because that's what we're assessing, right? And show why it's relevant. It's relevant because it's current information, because it relates to the main point, because, very specifically show that it's relevant for this and this and this reason. Okay? And finally, you're saying the evidence is representative. Okay, good. To support his point of view, the speaker brought stories, statistics, results of the experiment and survey. Okay. Moreover, there were statistics on project failures by... Yeah, but that doesn't prove that it's representative. You still have to explain why it's representative. In terms of representativeness, we're usually asking the question, how typical is that example given? So the stories, the statistics, the results of the survey and the experiment, how typical are these of the usual creative process, right? That's what we're asking, really. Not simply the fact that he used those things, but are they representative? So you still have to explain why it's representative. Okay. Here you've done this a little bit, which showed that the latter fail much less often. Okay, you're sort of getting there, but you still have to explain why that's the typical creative process. In other words, why is procrastination actually a way of creation as well? That's what he's arguing, right? The supporting idea is that original thinkers often procrastinate, but really they're not just procrastinating, they are actually at the back of their mind, they're creating, they're germinating those ideas, which will come out, at the end. And so you have to prove here, you have to say, you have to show, not prove, but show to the reader why these examples are typical of the creative process, right? And so here, when you've said this, I think you're getting there. But overall, I have to say, all of your paragraphs are quite good. You're in very good shape from what I can see. And if you do something like this on the exam, you should be more than fine. I would, again, you definitely need to use the word relevance at some point to make sure that you're talking about that. And maybe fix this main idea. But other than that, these are more or less small things. Your paragraphs are very good. You've understood the task, and you should be able to do well at the exam. Okay, I hope this is helpful. By the way, you've been a wonderful student, and I wish you all the very best.